Whence the Whispers Come, Chapter 2, Down the Rabbit Hole. The Caldwell residence was neat, its cleanliness a stark contrast against the oppressive gloom that blanketed Eldermire like an unwanted guest. Margaret led me quietly through the entryway, her husband Jonathan trailing behind in tense silence. Their shadows danced uncertainly beneath the dim glow of electric lamps, flickering softly as we moved toward the sitting room. "Please, Gideon, have a seat." Jonathan gestured toward an armchair upholstered in worn velvet. The chair creaked gently beneath me, a sound almost apologetic. Across from me, the Caldwells sank slowly into a matching settee, their eyes heavy with sleepless nights. The sitting room was a picture of modern domesticity, with lace curtains and furniture aged by years of careful use. The photographs lined the mantel and sat clustered on side tables, each frame an attempt to capture happiness frozen in time. Most prominently displayed were the portraits of Jonathan and Margaret, smiling in earnest but aged expression. A few smaller frames held images of Lily, innocent, shy eyes peering from behind strands of golden hair, clutching the worn form of a stuffed rabbit like it was her only shield against the world's cruelties. I took out a notepad and pencil, flipping through pages already stained by countless investigations. We'll start with a few basic questions. When did you last see Lily? Margaret's hand shook as she brushed a stray lock of hair from her eyes. 4 days ago, she said softly, her voice barely louder than a whisper. It was just after dinner. She went upstairs to get ready for bed. Jonathan's jaw clenched tightly, eyes locked on the floor. She asked me to read to her later that night. Sometimes she struggles to fall asleep. She gets nervous when it's dark. His voice caught, breaking slightly under the weight of guilt. When I went upstairs, she wasn't in the room. And there was no sign of forced entry? I asked gently. Jonathan shook his head, eyes haunted. Nothing. Her window was shut tight, the doors locked. It was like she'd vanished. My pencil scratched quietly, notes accumulating like puzzle pieces without a clear shape. Do you have any recent pictures of her? Anything that might help with the search? Margaret stood unsteadily, crossing the room to a cabinet beside the mantel. With trembling hands, she pulled a silver-framed photo from a shelf. Returning, she handed it to me, fingers lingering as though reluctant to part with even this small piece of her daughter. The photograph showed Lily smiling shyly, standing in front of a flowering rosebush, sunlight dancing gently over her features. Clutched tightly in her hands was that same stuffed rabbit, worn fur, faded eyes, the constant companion of a childhood innocence. I studied the image, noting every detail, the delicate lace trim of her dress, the subtle hesitation behind her smile. Margaret sank back beside Jonathan, leaning slightly into him, her posture a study in quiet desperation. Do you think you can find her? My eyes returned to Lily's innocent face, frozen in that moment before her world had been altered forever. Eldermire's silence crept in around us again, heavy and suffocating, whispering secrets that begged not to be uncovered. I'll do everything I can, I promised quietly, aware of how fragile hope sounded in a place like this. But I need to see her room next. They nodded numbly, eyes pleading silently for a miracle. But miracles were rare, especially in places like Eldermire. I rose slowly, sliding the photo carefully into my pocket. Every mystery was a descent, each clue another step downward, deeper into the rabbit hole. And as I followed the Caldwells up creaking stairs toward the room Lily once occupied, I knew one thing with grim certainty. Some holes were deeper than others, and Eldermire's was bottomless. I followed Jonathan and Margaret upstairs, my footsteps muffled by a worn carpet runner, faded floral patterns barely clinging to their color beneath the dim hall lighting. More framed photographs lined the wall beside the stairwell, a silent procession of captured memories. Jonathan and Margaret smiled from their places in neatly posed wedding portraits, anniversary dinners, and modest holidays. Interspersed were more recent images of Lily, her shy grin partially obscured by strands of golden hair, always clutching that same rabbit. Each picture felt heavier, laden with quiet desperation, a subtle mourning for happier times. We reached the landing, and Jonathan paused outside a door painted a pale lavender. Margaret hesitated, eyes shadowed by grief as she turned the handle. "This is Lily's room," she said quietly, voice catching slightly before she regained her composure. I stepped inside, the small bedroom exactly what I would have imagined for a cautious 11-year-old. Walls adorned with pastel wallpaper, shelves lined with books worn at the edges, a dresser scattered with hair ribbons and colored pencils, all placed as though she might walk through the door at any moment. The room felt like a shrine, preserved exactly as it had been 4 days ago. In the center of the neatly made bed sat the stuffed rabbit, its brown fur worn thin in places from years of loving embraces. It stared blankly ahead, one long, floppy ear slightly askew, carefully stitched back onto its head. I glanced around, taking mental notes of every detail, scribbling observations onto my pad out of habit. My eyes lingered on the rabbit. Something about it made me pause. "You said Lily always slept with the rabbit?" I asked, stepping closer to the bed. Jonathan nodded slowly, confusion coloring his expression. "Yes, she rarely went anywhere without it." I reached out, gently lifting the toy from the bed. The stitching on its ear was recent, careful but slightly uneven. Did something happen to it? He exchanged a quick glance with Margaret before answering hesitantly. "It tore one afternoon when Lily was outside playing in the yard. She came to us crying, so Margaret stitched it up again that evening." A feeling, subtle but insistent, tugged at the edge of my awareness. I pulled the photograph Margaret had given me from my coat pocket, studying it closely again under the dim bedroom lamp. My heart tightened. The photograph clearly showed Lily clutching the rabbit, but it was the other ear that bore the careful, uneven stitches. Margaret stepped closer, sensing my confusion. "What is it? Is something wrong?" I held the rabbit beside the photograph side by side, allowing Jonathan and Margaret to see this clearly. "This isn't the same rabbit," I said quietly. "The stitching here is on the left ear, but in this picture, taken recently, it's on the right." The Caldwells stared at each other, bewildered and frightened, their confusion giving way to dawning horror. Margaret's voice quivered. I don't understand. What does that mean?" I carefully placed the rabbit back onto the bed, its eyes staring vacantly as though hiding secrets of its own. "It means someone replaced Lily's rabbit with a stand-in." "But why?" Jonathan whispered, panic creeping into his voice. "Who would do something like that?" I shook my head slowly, my gaze tracing once more around Lily's room, now feeling even emptier than before. "I'm not sure yet, but one thing is clear. This isn't the behavior of a child simply running away. Whoever took Lily went to great lengths to hide their tracks. She didn't leave here on her own." Margaret's breath caught, turning into a strangled sob she barely stifled. Jonathan drew her close, eyes darkening with a mix of anger and hopeless despair. My stomach tightened with grim resolve. This wasn't just a missing girl. This was something darker, more deliberate. Something that whispered secrets through Eldermire's walls, mocking my attempts at understanding. Whoever had taken Lily Caldwell knew precisely what they were doing, down to the smallest detail, even the stitching of a child's beloved toy. And that thought unsettled me more than I'd care to admit. I looked up from the rabbit, eyes meeting Jonathan's worried gaze. "Have either of you seen anyone unfamiliar around the house lately? Any strangers passing by or acting suspiciously?" Margaret shook her head slowly, brows knitting. "No. Nothing like that. Eldermire isn't exactly a place strangers visit often. Everyone knows everyone else here." Jonathan's eyes flickered with uncertainty. "We keep to ourselves mostly. If anyone strange came around, I'm sure we would have noticed." I nodded, jotting down a few notes. Though their answers hadn't provided any new insight, my thoughts drifted briefly to the strange gathering I'd seen near the old schoolhouse. It still lingered in the shadows of my mind, the robed figures surrounding that lone figure dressed in white. The image felt surreal, but my gut urged caution. "Do the local kids around here ever stay out after dark?" I asked carefully. "You know, play games, cause trouble." Margaret gave a weary glance towards Jonathan. "Not usually, no. It's quiet here after sunset. Most families keep their children inside." Jonathan nodded in agreement, adding quietly, "Eldermire's always been that way. People just prefer to keep indoors." I hesitated, mulling over their responses. A town so deliberately withdrawn, its residents fearful or unwilling to venture beyond their households after dark. Something about it unsettled me. Did Lily have friends, anyone she was particularly close with? Margaret's eyes softened slightly. Just one. Her name's Abigail Carter. They spent a lot of afternoons playing together here or over at Abigail's house. I scribbled down Abigail Carter's name, underlining it for emphasis. I'll pay the Carter family a visit in the morning, I said quietly. Maybe Abigail saw or heard something. Even small details can help. Margaret nodded silently, hope flickering dimly behind weary eyes. My watch ticked softly in the quiet of Lily's room. I glanced at it, exhaustion seeping in from the edges. It's getting late, I said, stifling a yawn that came on quicker than I expected. Is there a motel nearby, a place I could settle in for the night? Jonathan gave me directions, his voice weary but grateful. The Eldermire Inn, it's not much, but it's clean and quiet enough. Just head down toward Maiden Street and take a left at the church. You'll see it. I thanked them, slipping my notepad back into my pocket and offering as reassuring a glance as I could muster. Try to get some rest. I'll be back in touch soon. They walked me to the door, anxiety etched deep into their faces. Margaret lingered in the doorway, arms folded protectively across her chest, as though fearing the shadows might close in at any moment. I gave them one last nod of reassurance, stepping out into Eldermire's cool, suffocating darkness. The drive toward the Eldermire Inn was short, but my mind raced far ahead, combing through the strands of the case. Questions piled high, each answer only revealing more mysteries. Who would go to such lengths to replace a child's favorite toy? Someone familiar to Lily, perhaps? Or at least someone careful enough to study her closely, but for what reason? And the robed figures in the schoolhouse. Were they connected? A strange cult, a secretive ritual, or merely a trick played by fatigue and shadows? Even now, I wasn't entirely sure what I'd seen. The rabbit lingered in my thoughts like a splinter, persistent and troubling. Someone had deliberately misled the Caldwells, made them believe nothing was out of place. It suggested an intimate knowledge of the family, or at least of Lily herself. The headlights illuminated a worn sign ahead. Eldermire Inn, vacancy. I eased the car into the parking space beneath the flickering neon letters. The vacancy sign buzzing softly. The inn looked quiet, nearly deserted in the gloom, the sort of place that attracted travelers only out of desperation. As I turned off the engine, the questions churned restlessly in my mind, each answer shadowed by uncertainty, each suspicion tangled in doubt. Nothing about this case felt simple, and Eldermire seemed intent on keeping its secrets hidden behind drawn curtains. Eldermire's rabbit hole was deepening, and I knew I was only just beginning to fall. Stepping out of my car, I glanced up at the neon sign buzzing softly overhead. Eldermire Inn. The flickering letters bathed the parking lot in a washed-out glow, shadows retreating reluctantly from its reach. Inside, the lobby was dim, furnished sparingly with aging decor and weathered furnishings. A faint smell of mildew lingered in the air, mingling uneasily with something vaguely metallic. Behind a counter of polished wood, a tired-looking attendant sat, leafing distractedly through a dog-eared paperback. I looked up, eyes weary but cautious. "Evening, stranger. Need a room?" "Yeah," I said quietly, sliding my wallet from the inside of my coat pocket. "Just for tonight, maybe a few more nights if things drag on." The attendant nodded slowly, jotting something down in a worn ledger. As he moved, my gaze drifted to the wall behind him, lingering curiously on something strange hanging there. A porcelain mask, pale and unsettling. The mask's eyes were empty, hollow sockets, and its smooth surface was etched with strange, twisting symbols. Something about it made my skin crawl. "Interesting decoration," I said, nodding toward it. "Yours?" He glanced back, offering a thin smile. "That? Nah, that's my son's. Art class project from school. He brought it home, proud as anything. Strange, I know. Kids these days, right?" "Strange indeed," I murmured, unable to shake the sense of unease as the mask stared blankly at me. He handed me a key dangling from a faded plastic tag. Room 6. "Enjoy your stay. Let me know if you need anything." "Thanks," I said quietly, turning away from the counter and its porcelain guardian. Back at the car, I lifted a corkboard from the trunk, tucked beneath a blanket that still smelled faintly of stale cigarettes. It was a familiar tool, a roadmap of my own making, a desperate attempt to chart paths through chaos. In my room, I set the corkboard atop a small desk beneath a lamp whose bulb barely fought back the shadows. I pinned up Lily's photo, scribbled notes, bits of hastily scrawled observations, linking each fragment with lines of red string. Slowly, Eldermire's twisted puzzle began taking shape, though the picture it revealed was still murky, distorted. I stepped back, assessing my handiwork with tired eyes. Out of the corner of my vision, something flickered. Movement. Subtle, yet enough to catch my attention. Instantly alert, my head snapped toward the window, pulse quickening, my breath caught sharply. There, briefly silhouetted in the darkness outside, stood a figure, face pale and featureless beneath the same unsettling porcelain mask I'd seen in the lobby. Instinct drove my hand quickly to the revolver at my hip. I pulled it free, adrenaline driving out fatigue, stepping quickly to the door. I moved quietly outside, scanning the shadowed corners of the motel exterior, gun at the ready. But nothing stirred. The night was empty, silent as a tomb. "Losing it already, Gideon," I muttered, shaking my head as I holstered my gun. Maybe exhaustion was finally getting the best of me. Determined to reassure myself, I made my way briskly back to the lobby, glancing warily behind me with each step. Inside, the attendant looked up with mild surprise as I stepped urgently into the quiet room. The mask hung exactly as it had before, motionless and indifferent, staring blankly ahead. I felt a knot in my chest loosen slightly, though the memory of that fleeting glimpse still unsettled me. "Everything all right?" the attendant asked warily, closing his book. I exhaled slowly, calming my nerves. "Yeah, long night. Thought I saw something outside my room, but it's nothing." He gave a soft chuckle, understanding enough. "This place can play tricks on you. Folks here tend to get jumpy at shadows. Comes with the territory, I suppose." Nodding absently, I thanked him and turned back toward my room. Eldermire was beginning to fray my nerves, and I'd only just arrived. Outside again, I paused, noticing something I hadn't seen before. Through gaps in the trees behind the hotel, small lights flickered and danced, distant but distinct, like firelight or lanterns weaving paths between shadowed trunks. My brow furrowed, curiosity mingling with caution. The lights seemed to move purposefully, almost rhythmically. My hand drifted back toward my revolver, but exhaustion spoke louder. It was late, and the day had already taken its toll. Investigating strange lights in the Eldermire's woods could wait until morning. As I stepped back into the room and closed the door firmly behind me, I couldn't help but feel the weight of unanswered questions bearing down on me. Each revelation was met by a deeper mystery. Eldermire guarded its secrets jealously, taunting me at the edges of perception. Settling into bed, I left the lamp burning, its feeble glow offering scant comfort against the encroaching darkness. Tomorrow, I'd unravel more of this tangled web. But tonight, sleep called me gently, promising respite from porcelain masks and flickering shadows. Outside, Eldermire waited silently, its whispered secrets humming softly beneath the midnight sky.